Thank y'all so much for joining us. We've already got people showing up in the chat. Uh, I'm Chris Hennessy. This is Nathan. Say hi, Nathan. Yeah. This is Ending the Stigma, and we appreciate y'all for dropping in. We bring in all kinds of people here just to talk about the stigmas associated with people who've been to prison or have been addicted to drugs and alcohol, which usually leads to prison, and just have what we can do to help end that. So we just have real conversations just try to bring some awareness to it. I'm gonna say hi to some people in the comments. Usama, what's going on, man? It's the middle of the night where you are, dude. What are you doing up? Garen
Yeah, it's got to be
Belaney,
like 3 a.m. there.
yeah, 3 or 4 a.m. Living legend Ann Small. Hey, Ann, how are you, ma'am? Another Texan in the house. Travis Lochner's in the house. Usama's back. There he is. Nice setup, Nathan. That's his work computer and his personal computer.
Right.
So our guest tonight is Megan Racer. She is also a felon. She's been to prison. She struggled with addiction. She's gotten out. And like she said backstage, she hit the ground running and didn't take no for an answer from anybody and has just um, been doing amazingly well. So we're going to let her tell her story. Hey, Lauren, thanks for dropping in. Um, Y'all go follow her if you're not already. She posts really openly about it and just like really raw and vulnerable stuff that'll make you stop and think. Um, and just gets a ton of engagement on it because she's real about it. Like she doesn't try and hide anything, which is really cool. Hey Sam, thanks for dropping in. I squirrel out on the comments. Megan will see that whenever she gets out here. Um, but yeah, so without any further ado, I'm going to bring Megan Racer out. Hi,
Hello.
Megan.
Hi.
Did you get everything figured out?
I think so. Can you hear me
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. I hope it's not like crackling or anything.
No, you sound okay. Yeah, Sam, you are still a Texan, even though you live in Utah. He's in Utah. He transplanted over there for a while. Carl Sean Watkins. How are you, sir? He did a thing. Yes, he did. Um, so thank you for being here, Megan. I appreciate it. It was kind of short notice. I did not have a guest for this week up until whatever day it was I reached out to you, Friday, Thursday, or Friday of last week.
Yeah.
Um, she graciously agreed to come on last minute and tell her story. So we're just kind of going to let her take it away and just tell us how it started, where it's or how it's going, kind of thing.
Okay. Just kind of start from the beginning.
Yeah, wherever you want to start.
Such a story. Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? We may be here longer than an hour.
So I can sum it up. Um, so I guess just starting off with childhood, things were just a little bit different for me. Just the way I interacted with people, I had a challenging time just peopling. I didn't really understand how like social networking worked. I didn't understand how people had friends. Like it just wasn't a thing I was very comfortable doing. So I spent a lot of time by myself, and I was struggling with depression as a kid. I was diagnosed with body dysmorphia disorder in my early 20s. And, it finally all made sense. Like when I got to college and I took a course in abnormal psychology.
Mhm.
And I was just reading about all the different disorders in the DSM. And I hit body dysmorphia and I was just like, oh, that's me. Like that fits who I am to a T. And I was already seeing somebody and she set me up to get, analyzed or whatever and ended up getting diagnosed with that. But that really ravaged my life for years. It kept me away from people. It was a very challenging thing to go through and not really have people understand what it is or, why it is that I have this kind of mental health issue on top of the anxiety and the major depression.
What
Uh,
what is what did you say it was called? Body dysmorphia?
yeah, body dysmorphia
What
disorder.
is that? Yeah.
I guess in a sense, it's like a hyper focus on an imperfection that I see,
Mm,
necessarily other people don't. And it's
gotcha.
that I'm fixated on 24/7. It prevented me from going out of the house, socializing with people, just being a part of everything. And it was all I could think
Hmm.
about. The certain things that I didn't like about myself physically
Hmm.
really it ruled my life, for a really long time, and it's challenging to explain now. Like, I do feel so much more comfortable in my own skin. Like, it had to come internally first, and then I was able to then externally be okay.
Right.
But it's not a made up disease. It takes people's lives, and
Hmm.
it kept me in the house by myself for a long time. And it took a lot of work when I got sober to accept me.
Hmm.
So I struggled. I just struggled as a kid, and I latched on to, like, okay, I'm smart. I can find my worth in my brain. And so that's where I felt comfortable, and that's where I could control situations. So, if people didn't like me externally, then I'm just going to make them notice me by being smart.
Hmm.
Um, so I didn't really get into the drug scene in, like, middle school, high school. I was very naive. I didn't really understand much. I didn't really get much explanation about, like, the birds and the bees and all that kind of stuff. I was a pretty sheltered kid.
Yeah.
And, after high school, that's when, like, the experimenting started. I was 18 and I was in love. Like, I found a man who made me feel worthy because he was a very well desired person and he wanted me. So then I felt like, okay, like, I'm putting everything I have into this person.
Hmm.
I didn't know how to find it in self.
Hmm.
So, this person introduced me to my first hard drugs. Like, he brought cocaine home one day, and at that point I had never done a hard drug, and I looked at it and I was just like, "Oh man, all right, like, we're going to do this." Okay. And it was a decent amount, right? Like, it was a significant amount for somebody who's never done an
Right.
substance in their life. And I just remember, he lines it up and he's like, "All right, just go for it." So I snort it, and I mean, the first thing that I could feel was like, "Oh, like, this is normal. This is normal life. This is how people feel."
Hmm.
I mean, this is how people are capable of waking up every day and not wanting to die. Like, they just do drugs and they're good. And then the second thing I thought after that was like, man, this not gonna be enough coke for tonight. Like, we're gonna have to get more. It's
I've been there.
like a pretty good amount, and I'm just like, nope, this isn't enough. I didn't say this because I, at the time, was like, I can't say these kind of things. Just be, grateful for what you have. And
Hmm.
we do that, stay up all night, whatever else happens. And a couple of nights later, he comes home, I'm taking a shower, and he has half a pill, right? It's like a blue pill. And he's like, "Hey, here, take this." All right, I was so against drugs my whole life, and then I meet somebody and they introduce this into my life, and it's like, all right, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Um, so I take the pill and I feel amazing. Like, I I feel better than I felt when I did the cocaine. I feel at home. I feel at peace. Like, things are really making sense. They're really clicking, and it just didn't stop. This person that
Hmm.
I was with, like, it was that first great love, right? It's that.
Hmm.
And again, my worth is all in this one human. So when he cheated and then left me, my world was, like, destroyed. Like, I put
Hmm.
everything that I felt was worthy into a person.
Hmm.
And so, then that night, like the night he left, I went to our dealer and I was like, cool, so I need some stuff. And it just didn't stop, it got worse. And the people I was picking continued to get worse. The situations I was putting myself in with these men was getting bad. There was the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like my tolerance level for it kind of diminished once I got to my children's father, because by that point, he tried to hit me and I punched him back. Like I was done at that point. I had
Yeah.
been hit. I'd already been choked. It was like, okay, like I'm ready. Let's do this. So it just got to a really dangerous point by the third person, like by that third physically abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it just gets crazier. I meet my children's father. We're so not a good match at all. It's basically a drug relationship. That's it.
Yeah, those when you said it gets crazier, like in my head, I'm thinking back to my progression too, and it was like it does. It doesn't do anything but
the
get crazier.
more insane. And then the things like your list, the things that I haven't done that yet. It's like, well, just stay in the game a little bit longer. It'll happen eventually. Like you're
Yeah,
not immune to addiction. You're not immune to the really just disgraceful, disgusting things you'll do to get your high. It's just how long are you willing to hold out?
yeah.
Um, yeah, that relationship was no good. And I'm doing pills and I get pregnant with our daughter. And I think I found out like that first month. And by this point, I'm already, in the Oxycontin world pretty hard. And it's very challenging for me to stop. I don't know that there's resources out there at this time. Like, I don't know that I'm becoming really addicted to this substance. It just, that idea never crossed my mind. And it's super
Hmm.
naive. But like, I grew up as a very naive child. Like, I
Yeah.
apparently experienced everything the hard way. And so by I think 7 months, I was finally able to stop using. Um, had my daughter. She was healthy. She's been healthy since. And I think about 2 or 3 months after she was born, and at this point, like dad and I aren't really together. And I've like moved out of where we were living, moved in with my cousin, let him come back. I wanted him to know his daughter, whatever. And it's always this back and forth with us. And I knew that while I was pregnant he was using heroin. I would
Hmm.
find it, I would throw it away. Like I didn't understand that heroin is just so physically addictive versus just being like mentally.
And isn't it? Let me interrupt you and ask you and say this because yeah, I did meth back in the day, and I did a little bit of coke, but it's funny how when you're doing meth and coke, how bad you look down on the heroin and the heroin users. Isn't
Vice,
it?
it's
And
vice.
yeah, like like is one is worse than the other or whatever. They're all drugs, but it's like we really had this thing against heroin and heroin users.
Hmm. And that, I mean, that was his mentality too. So I was that user who, when I was on heroin, like I had to have meth because like I have to function, like I have to be a mom, I have to go to work, like I have to do all
Hmm.
these things, and I can't nod out while I'm doing that. And
Right.
it was just really funny that he just had a problem with that. I'm like, we're banging heroin, man. Like,
Yeah, I know,
what
right? Like,
do you mean? Like, this doesn't make sense.
yeah.
But yeah, so 2 months through 2 or 3 months into having my daughter, I catch him using heroin again. And I was just like, here, you know what, I'm gonna take this, I'll leave you a little piece and the rest is mine. And so at 2.5 months I'm smoking heroin.
Hmm.
And I just got really bad after that. It progressed. It was like a year and a half of me using it, and DCS came into our lives. At that point, when DCS came, like dad was already gone again in another state. DCS gets involved. He comes back. We end up closing the case, right? Like I get our daughter back. I get pregnant sober, but I get pregnant during this whole time by him. You know, we hadn't talked, and we like this is so this is so so
It's the way it works in that world, man. Like it's
the,
embarrassing to talk about and crazy to think you did that stuff, but it's just the way it is.
no, it is. It's so silly. Like, you know, he and I have to drug test for task, right? Because we have a DCS case. They want to know we're sober, all of that. So I'm doing my thing. I'm sober. I think it's like 6 months into my sobriety, and he and I are not talking. We're not on good terms. And I go to, you know, go test, and I see him there. And I was like, oh, hey, like you look good and I look good. And, you know, he said, let's go hang out. And we go hang out, get some dinner, end up, you know, sleeping together. And that's how we conceived our son at that time.
That's about the way it works, too, isn't it?
So I get pregnant. I've got a DCS case. I'm like just that typical broken, you know, woman
Yeah,
fighting an addiction and also fighting for her kids. You know, it's a challenge. Like being a mom and trying to stay sober and trying to raise your kid, now 2 kids. It's hard, and there's not a ton of support out there. I mean, there is. I just didn't know there was
right,
support. No.
right.
Um, so yeah, I get pregnant with our son and I hide it from DCS. And, you know, he like, so he ends up on Cinco de Mayo. He was still off the charge. On Cinco de Mayo, he tries to kill himself, right? And I immediately tell DCS and I'm like, hey, I told you, guy's crazy. Like, he needs to be medicated. And so he ends up, he wasn't successful, moves back to the state he's in. We end up closing the case, and you know, I'm maintaining sobriety. Like I'm in the rooms, I have a sponsor, I'm like, you know, have H&I commitments, I'm holding meetings, I'm doing the most, and I still feel like lonely. You know, I didn't feel complete. Like I rushed into my sobriety with having my kids back right away, and it was very challenging. So whenever I do talk to women who are like in the detox center or, you know, residential or whatever the case, it's like slow your fucking roll.
Yeah.
You were just out here selling your butt to get dope, and you're telling me you're going to be the world's greatest mom that your kids need. It's just not, you know. I had
Yeah,
like 9 months of sobriety, 9 or 10, and I get my daughter back, and my son's not born yet, but like I wasn't ready.
yeah.
I'm not mentally capable of handling my own thoughts, let alone raising children
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
creating productive members of society. It's just, I was not ready. And unfortunately, I made choices and I created these 2 amazing humans. So it's like, you need to step up and take this responsibility.
Hmm.
You know, I always tell women, like, you're still their mom, but you're a mom at a distance for a good reason.
Hmm.
Your higher power, if he sees fit for you to be a mom in their life directly, then like hold on to that and cherish it. But like until then, until you're ready, like you don't know when you're ready,
Right.
because there's so many things that
But I can tell you, you're not ready now.
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Like been there, like, you know.
yeah.
And so I was maintaining sobriety, I was living life, and dad wasn't in the picture. I For like a year straight, you know, after having my son and having my daughter back, for like a year straight, I'm calling him, I'm like texting him, like, hey, come back. He's like telling me he's gonna take out this insurance policy and like kill himself and this all these crazy things. And I'm just like, no, like your son doesn't know you. I need you in their lives. Like you're their dad. Um, so he ends up coming back. I think my son's about a year and a half at this point. And I let him live with me. And a couple of months into it, I'd say 4 months into it, he brings opiates into the house, and it's on. Like,
Yeah.
no, I could have said no, but I chose not to.
Yeah.
And, at this point, like, I'm working for the court system. I was like a file clerk. I'm doing a job that I really enjoy, and like it challenges my brain every day. There's always something new. And I come home from work, and I get the kids and all that, and I walk back into my bedroom, and he's in there, and he says, "Hey, come here." And I'm like, "Okay." I go over to my bathroom, and he opens the medicine cabinet, and he pulls out foil and heroin and the tutor and lighter and all that, and he's like, "All right, here." And nothing in me said no. Nothing in me was
Yeah.
like, "This is a bad idea," you
Yeah.
know. And I think 2 weeks later, he shot me up for the first time.
Mhm. Isn't it funny? Like I've heard a lot of stories like that. I quit when I went to prison, so I had like 8.5 years almost to detox and get it out of my system. But I've heard other, just like you said, people that have quit for a while for whatever reason, and when they start back, it's always worse than it was
Oh,
before they quit.
oh yeah,
So you went from smoking it to shooting it that quick.
that quick.
Yep.
Hmm. And there was no going back the other way. Like, once you cross
Yeah.
that,
Once you've shot it, that's it.
yeah, it's over. Oh, yeah, I'm trying. I'm working court system. I'm shooting dope. Um, just not a good combination. I end up like getting a promotion, and I move to a different courthouse for juveniles. And dad ends up leaving again, going back to a different state. Uh, I'm with the two kids. I moved back in with my mom, and she definitely suspects something's going on, but like, I don't know. It's just like this unspoken thing that's happening. And I get really bad. Like, I'm bringing all of my tools, I'm
Hmm.
everything into the courthouse. Like, I have a cup full of Fireball on ice. I've got a little baggie of meth, and I've got my rig with me, and like, I'm getting high in the bathroom.
Mm.
You know, just like, I'm doing everything in my power to destroy my life. And
Yeah.
nobody seems to do anything. They don't do anything. The
Yeah.
time where they did do something, I had passed out in my car on the clock, and they found me. And they were like, "We can't tell you to take any time off, but we're going to suggest that you take some FMLA time for whatever's going on." And so I I did that, and I went to a doctor. I was like, "I'm just so depressed." And he was like, "Yeah, you look really depressed." And so he signs off on my paperwork, and I take some time off, not obviously to get clean, but
Right.
I take time off, and I'm still out there, dragging my kids with me everywhere. Again, like, generally a single mom with two kids. So what do you do? And go back to work for, I don't know, maybe 5 more months, and I just can't do it anymore. It was like that, living a double life. I just
Yeah.
couldn't do it anymore. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I didn't get fired. I don't know how I got a promotion. I do know how, because we're super manipulative when we're in our active using, but like, me looking
Hmm.
back at me then, there's no way.
Yeah.
Clearly, this girl, there's something's wrong with her.
Right.
She should not be here.
Right.
Rehab is where she should be.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I quit my job. I cashed my 401k out. I bought my kids some bicycles, and I it was off to the races. I went through that money pretty quick, and I needed to get money, and I wasn't working. So an opportunity came up through, cartels. Like, we're in Arizona, so we're super close to the border, and that's just kind of what people do.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not what people do. Some people.
It's what you did.
like how it just
Right.
warped. That is how warped my reality is and my world.
Yeah.
So that really didn't work out for me. I ended up like planting drugs in my truck. I wasn't a scapegoat. I know that because of the amount that I had. There's no way. Um, but they tell me, okay, like you're gonna go to Cali. Like I had to go down there and meet them, stay in this hotel, and they're like, hey, you're gonna go to Cali, and we're gonna have you pick up some money and then come back to us, and then we'll like figure out like the drug running over the border.
Hmm.
I'm like, all right. So, I leave that night and they obviously know I have a problem. Um, and so I'm like about to go hit up one of the dealers that I met out there, like some American guy that's living in Mexico evading federal police. And why? Yeah. And they find me. I'm like on this road heading to his house and they're right behind me and they make me pull over and I'm like, what is going on? I was supposed to leave and I need to get my dope. And like I'm crying and I'm like, what do you want? Like, what do you want from me? And they're like, you need to go. And I'm like, well, I need to, I need my dope. So I'm gonna go get it. And they're like, no, 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 just go wait by the border, we'll get it for you. So I wait and they get there, I do my shot, they like gave me some meth and then I didn't know at the time, but it was like a fentanyl pill. And like I'm
Mm.
a heroin user, fentanyl really wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
But they just gave me an oxycontin. I'm like, what the what the fuck is this gonna do?
Right.
I'm like a couple grams a day habit here, man. This isn't gonna do anything. So, I do my shot and yeah, they're like, okay, so once you cross the border, I need you to call this number. They'll give you an address to where you're going, and then you'll go to California. All right. So I end up crossing the border, and they send me over to secondary, right? Because I look suspicious, and they bring the dog out, and the dog hits. The dog. I see the dog hit, and they have me get out. Um, and they arrest me. Like they arrest me right there. So at this time I don't know what's going on. Like I don't understand the severity of the situation because in my like, oh, I'm going to collect money. Like it's not as bad as, crossing drugs or like dealing with drugs yet. Like they don't trust me to do that yet, but I'm so delusional. So far so delusional.
Right.
So like they pat me down and they're like, "Do you have anything on you?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have anything on me." And they end up finding like my empty rig, and they take that, but they don't find the rest of the stuff on me. So they put me back in the cell and they shut the door. And I will tell you, like when they shut the door, it was the most freeing feeling ever. It was just like the reality that like this is done. I'm done. It's over.
Hmm.
Like I don't have to live this way anymore.
Right.
Uh, And so they shut the door and they give me a blanket. And I have like, I pull out whatever I have on me and I just like, I swallowed everything basically. Like I had a chunk of heroin, the fentanyl pill, and snorted up the meth and passed out. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't really care what was going to happen. I just knew like I couldn't flush the drugs. And if I go, like I go. So I think a couple hours later, I wake up and they do their interrogation. I'm just bawling. They tell me how much they found and what they found, and I was just like besides myself. Like I couldn't fathom that they found 89 pounds of methamphetamine in a vehicle.
Holy shit. That's insane.
Right. Let me tell you. I, and I tell this
Especially since you didn't even know it was there.
right, that part. And people are just like, oh, well, when I go to prison, they're like, bullshit, you didn't know. I really fucking didn't know. And it is what it is. I know that like I wasn't living the best life and I knew what I was eventually going to be doing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. Like
Right.
saved my life, and if I spend a lot of time in prison, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to fight a case that's pretty clear cut,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So they tell me and I just like what? This can't be reality. You know, it can't be real. This So I spend about a month in, well, I spent some time in like the Yuma detention center down there, and I end up detoxing in like solitary confinement. It was the worst experience of my life. I'll never forget it, ever, ever, ever. Um, it was it was a really challenging 7 days of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And by the eighth day, they ended up transporting me up to Florence, Arizona, where they have like a facility there because I'm from Phoenix. And, I spent about a month there. And I had an option to go to a treatment facility, Crossroads, or I could spend more time in detention, kill my number a little bit. But I knew like I already had a mind full of recovery. Like I already knew that I needed it. So they said like they were going to accept me into their program. I uh, I think that was like the first blessing I was able to see
Mm-hmm.
in this process. I mean, I learned a lot. Like I was able to get out. I was out on pretrial, prior to them sentencing me, and I'm I'm a broken human being. I'm able to see, my kids, but my mom's super pissed at me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and my whole family is just like irate. They don't understand, nobody's like
Right.
struggled with this. So it's a very foreign thing for them, for little Megan to,
Right.
like little quiet Megan, to do something so crazy,
Yeah.
you
That's the way
know?
it was with my family too. Like I grew up in a really strong Christian home, really sheltered, really
Right.
sheltered. And so for me to go off the deep end and start using meth, like everybody's mind, they couldn't wrap their heads around it for anything.
No. Like this isn't a reality.
Yeah, like they just it's mind blowing.
Yeah. And like it's just the hell that I put my mom through, my stepdad and my kids. My mom had to file for guardianship of my kids, and she filed for guardianship at the courthouse that I worked at. So the commissioner that did her like sign off on the guardianship was the one of the commissioners I used to work for.
Hmm.
And he was just like, "Oh, Miss Racer, I know your daughter." And oh, my higher power is a jokester, let me tell you. Like I wanted to live this secret double life. Well, you know what? Like he's gonna make sure that I can't do that anymore. I
Hmm.
can learn to do it myself and to like admit my wrongs, to not live in secrecy anymore. But I was able to get out, and I spent about 4 months at Crossroads, doing a residential program, PHP, IOP. It was challenging. I was locked down basically there, but I was free in a way. And I got to spend 3 months with my kids after that. My mom let me back in her house. This is this woman. She went from like having guns everywhere in her house, ready for whatever, ready for whatever might happen. Her freaking daughter's doing, to allowing me back in the house to be back around the kids. And in that time, dad had filed something in the courts, and all that commotion's going on. Eventually my mom ended up getting custody of my kids
Hmm.
because she was the best fit. She was a stable household that they could know what's going on every day, feel safe, and
Right.
have their needs met, and then some,
Right.
which I didn't provide.
Right.
I couldn't do it. And so spend like 3 amazing months with my kids. I'm slowly like trying explain to my daughter I'm going to be going away again, and that's really challenging. The day of sentencing, I get to drop my kids off, and my daughter's just bawling, and I'm bawling, and my son's looking at us like, what's going on? He's pretty
Yeah.
little, timid. And so I kissed her goodbye. Like, I vividly remembered both of their faces when I had to say goodbye. And, several years later, when I'm out and we're living together and all that, she tells me, Mom, remember when you dropped me off that day? And I said, yeah, baby, what's going on? And she was like, well, I was really sad and nobody knew why I was so sad.
Mm,
I just like, you know,
mm,
that's
yeah.
me. Like, I did that. There's just so many spiritual awakenings that I was able to have, and they were so fucking painful, but
Mhm,
needed because I was such a self-centered, selfish person.
mhm.
Couldn't see past myself, you know? And my kids have really helped me grow as a human. I mean, I don't think I could have made it through all that. Like, I made it through all that sober. Like, using wasn't an option at this point
Right,
at all. Like,
right.
I leaned on the rooms. Um, I looked for them for support. And when I had my sentencing, the courtroom was full. The courtroom was full of my sober friends. It was full of like my boss at the time. My friends, like, I wanted my mom to have support because I knew I was going to prison that day. And I didn't want her to be alone in that sadness. Like,
Mhm,
it it finally dawned on me, like, I did this, and I get sentenced to, I think, 30 months in prison. Yeah, 30 months. Um, because I was a courier. They
mhm.
didn't they didn't see the drugs as mine. So I got a much, much lighter sentence. And the way that Arizona's laws work federally are a lot less harsh than a lot of other states.
Yeah.
We are a border state. They deal with this a lot. So I got a pretty lenient sentence. I think the probation wanted like 33 months, right? And so I get sentenced. My mom's screaming in the background. Everybody's around her, like, trying to console her. And they don't handcuff me in the courtroom. He's like, I'm not going to handcuff you here. Like, let's go in the back. We don't have to do that. All right. So he's like handcuffing me, and he's like, hey, I need you to look at me, the marshal. And I'm like, what's going on? He says, I've never seen that judge give less than 33 months for what you did. And I know it's just like 3 months, right? But that was significant.
Mhm,
And and I and it's just like so many moments of my higher power in my life when I just don't have the ability to do it anymore. Like, I literally, when I got arrested, I gave up. I,
mhm.
I gave over my power, my will, and I was done, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so so I go back to the detention center, I'm hanging out there for like a week, and they don't tell you when you're going to prison. They don't tell you where
Mm-mm,
you're going. It's
mm-mm.
federal, so you can go anywhere.
Anywhere in the country. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, you get a federal charge just because you are in whatever state you're in. You could end up all the way across the country at a different facility.
Right. And it doesn't matter what the judge recommends, none of that. Like,
Mm-mm,
like, it doesn't matter.
mm-mm.
Yeah, it's up to the BOP.
Yeah.
they're like they're your master now, man.
Mhm,
And so luckily there is a um, minimum security female prison out here in Arizona, not too far from where I live. And that's where I spent my time. Uh,
wow.
It was the prison camp. So we didn't have fences. We had like prisoners who drove the vans to like drop
Yeah.
off people at the halfway house. Like, we're the lowest risk offenders,
Mhm.
or we have the shortest amount of time versus like somebody who has a decade, like, they're going to
Right.
go to secure level.
Right.
um, Also, I was going to do the drug program I did in prison, the RDAP program. And by the grace of something greater than me, like I got into that program the second my ass hit prison.
Really?
Hmm.
And
That's
people,
crazy.
people are waiting years and months and
Yeah.
all that. I get in and I'm like target number one now because I'm brand new to prison and I get into this drug program that everybody on that campus is waiting to get into.
Hmm.
So like I didn't make a lot of friends right away, and I was fucking scared. And it was a whole process of like getting us to the prison. Like, we had to wait in the holding cell for about a day,
Hmm.
finally like get shackled up, and that whole process is intense because like shackle the last. So you hear all these chains. They have to get like the high security ones first, then the men, and they have a couple different cages. And then they finally get us in box and shackle us up, and they put us on the bus and we have to go to the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, but like the secured area. And then like Con Air is there. There's all these marshals around with like automatic weapons. It's just a whole freaking thing.
I can imagine, like, I've never been to federal prison, but I can imagine getting on a plane and doing all that to get on the plane is nuts.
Right. And they have to like, swap out, change out everything. And so you're waiting and you have to wait on everybody before going anywhere. And you still don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
They don't tell you. And you kind of figure, get on this bus, I'm staying in Arizona. But if I go here, like I'm getting on that plane and I'm going to Victorville or wherever.
Right.
But I ended up going to an Arizona camp. I was there for about a year. I did the RDAP program there for a year. Because I got in early, I wasn't able to leave when everyone else was leaving because I still had to do like serve some time. The drug program was pretty intense. It was an interesting way to do prison because not only do you have to like by the book follow prison rules, like you have to follow drug rules.
Hmm.
Like any little discretion, any deviation from that, and you get kicked out, and your
Right.
time's taken. Like you
Yeah.
know, months to a year that you get off your prison sentence, and that could be gone in a second, and it
Hmm.
happened. So it was just an interesting way of life living there because we're in a group of about 70 women all housed in the same unit, and we're basically required to like snitch on each other or we get kicked
Yeah.
out.
Hmm.
So it created a really weird dynamic. And we had to tell each other like why we were big pieces of shit. Like
Yeah.
what's wrong with us? I had women constantly, day after day, like, Megan, you're so manipulative, like telling me all my character defects on a daily basis. And it was a lot. Like you learned, you learn how to stand up for yourself, you learn how to call people out, but they break you down a lot. And
Hmm.
there's a huge mental component to that takes a long time to process when you get out.
Hmm.
I will say it's a decent program. Um, in a prison setting, it can create a lot of problems.
I bet. Because then you got to listen to these women talk shit about you all day long. Then you got to go back
Then you got to go back
to
and
the
live with,
wing with them. Yeah.
and it's not
And maintain all the rules.
that right.
Yeah.
And it's just like in talking to the people running the program, like you realize we're in prison, right? Like I am not telling these people my deepest, darkest secrets. If you think I'm not being compliant, like I'll comply to a point that appeases
Yeah.
you, but no,
Yeah.
like these women will get out one day. I
Yeah.
will not be a victim to them anymore. Or I will
Right.
not. No.
Right.
Yes, I made like decent friends while I was in there. You have to. You go
Hmm.
crazy. You go
Hmm.
absolutely crazy. Like you have to live inside prison as if you're never getting out. Like
Yeah.
that's it. Like my family and I got to like have business and stuff with my kids, but when they came, I was very disconnected, very disassociated. Like I didn't want to feel. Like I learned how to not feel
Hmm.
without drugs and alcohol. And that's been really damaging for me. now.
Yeah.
There are like residual effects of that currently to this day, where little by little it's starting to come back, but I'm pretty good at just not just being dead, you know?
Yeah. And you kind of have to do that uh, to an extent as a coping mechanism, especially if you are getting visits and you are getting phone calls and you do have contact with your family.
Yeah.
It's a weird dynamic. It was for me too. Like, yeah, I missed them and I wanted to spend time with them and I was glad when they came, but at the same time, it was like you're kind of sort of disconnected from them because you know you've got to go back to the wing and you know you've got X amount of years before you can get out.
Right.
So it's a weird dynamic.
It is. It's very, it was, and I, yeah, it's not easy at
Mm-mm.
all. Um, I mean, I found ways to cope, probably not the most healthy ways to cope while I was in prison. I started a relationship. I can say like that relationship was genuinely one of the first relationships I ever had where I wanted nothing from them and they wanted nothing from me other than my time, companionship, and love.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get to experience something pretty special, like something, most people don't get to experience in their life because
Mm-hmm.
we're around these people 24/7. We lived in the same unit. And you are going through something pretty traumatic. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those women weren't from Arizona. They weren't as lucky as I was, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not close to their families. They don't get to see
Mm-hmm.
their families very often, or they lost their kids through this entire process. Like
Mm-hmm.
so many blessings for me to see. Um, that like what I just can't fathom why I would want to pick up drugs ever again. Like
Right.
that desire's gone.
Right.
I've been freed of that desire to want to
Yeah.
drink. And it's like, why would I want to risk all of these beautiful blessings that I'm receiving? And to have that mindset while I was in prison was so important for me when I got out.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I get out, like I'm not, I still have some defects, right? But like I'm no longer living in such a self-centered world. I'm not as manipulative as I once was. Like I'm grateful. I'm grateful I didn't die. I'm grateful my kids are safe and happy and healthy and nothing bad ever happened to them. Like there's just so many good things to look at out of a really shitty situation that it's like, why would I ever want to just sit in this? And
Mm-hmm.
what is that going to bring? Like, what can I do about what I've already done? Nothing, but I use
Mm-hmm.
it as fuel to empower myself and, show my kids like your mom is worth it. Because if I don't feel I'm worth it and I don't show them that, then like, how are they going to know their worth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How can I empower somebody with worth if I don't have it? And
Right.
that was a big challenge for me. It was like, I just had self-loathing and I was a victim.
Yeah.
And when I could like take off those glasses, the victim glasses, right? And I could genuinely take them off and see the world not as a victim, things were very different for me. We learned like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Like if we change
Mm-hmm.
our thoughts, we change our feelings, and we change every fucking thing in our life. And that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
So like having that combination of like the 12 steps along with cognitive behavioral therapy, and then like 2 years into my sobriety, getting on some psych meds, like that combination for me is a solid winner. Like that's what I need to do. Like I can't lean on therapy only. I can't just lean on the rooms because like I tried that and I relapsed. Like I tried just leaning on therapy and recently that wasn't working. So it's like, okay, like, I need to stop being stubborn and just do the work. Um, so yeah, when I got out, I was still like considered an inmate. um, I was living in the halfway house for 3 months, and this is during COVID. So like we were on lockdown, and COVID restrictions lifted. I think my last month, and I wanted to work in recovery. Like I wanted to work for a treatment center and just kind of see where that took me.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a federal felony. Like
Right.
none of the old things I used to do are ever going to hire me again.
Right. Right.
Ever. So it was like, all right, God again is doing for me what I can't do for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Things away that no longer serve me. And he just had to show me in a really big way.
Mm-hmm.
So I started from the bottom, working in treatment centers, working overnights, and I was managing a house, and then I was a case manager, and I worked admissions, and now I get to do a job that I freaking love. Like I get to visit treatment centers and talk with like therapists and psychologists, and I get to meet with probation officers, and I get the everything I've ever wanted in one, right? And I get
Mm-hmm.
people, and I've seen people at their worst, and I've seen people in this like fentanyl epidemic, and it's insane. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching patients that I've known for a couple of years now, and they're dying, and it's like there's no way I can't be grateful. You know,
Yeah.
I have literally set my life up in a way where I, I have to remain humbled and
Yeah.
find gratitude in everything that I'm doing, or I'll die. Like I'm just a self-centered Megan is a dead Megan. Like there,
Right.
there's no in between. I don't know in betweens.
Right.
Um, going from like never having a criminal record to like you're you have a like one of the highest federal felonies you can have.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't take no for an answer. If somebody thought I wasn't qualified for something, I would show them why I was. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I adapted, I learned, I did whatever I needed to do in a way where my values and morals weren't compromised. And I really excelled in the field. A lot of people want to do what I'm doing, and they've been in this industry a minute, and
Mm-hmm.
like, a year and a half in, and I'm already doing things that people years in want to do. So it's just
Yeah.
like not having, like I said, not having the ability to hear no can, I mean, that can be like doing it in a way where I'm causing the least amount of harm. And that's
Right. Right.
so I love what I do. It's not what keeps me sober. And, I leaned on that for a while. So a couple months ago, I got a sponsor again, and we're working our steps. I just picked up a sponsee for the first time. Like, I feel like I'm in a place comfortable where I can give them
Mhm.
the attention they need. Like, for a minute, it was about my career and my kids.
Yeah.
Got
And you
out.
have your kids, right? Yeah. That's awesome.
Right. I got out and I was a full-time mom again. So, there were some kind of wacky things going on. Like my son has always been a little different, right? And we spent the last 2 years trying to get a diagnosis for him, and we finally got him, diagnosed with autism, and he has ADHD. But that took a minute. We finally got him like on a good medication regimen, like just things that I could never imagine doing before. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
advocating for my kid here, right? Like
Yeah.
talking to the state, talking to Social Security, like doing all these things. Talking to the special ed teacher, like not taking no for an answer. Like, you will help my son. There's
Right.
something wrong. Not wrong, but there is something different that like
Yeah.
you all need to help him with. That's why you
Yeah.
give.
Right.
And then like that relationship with my daughter, so like that took a back seat, right? And so now it's my daughter's turn. Like, she's at flag football right now, and that's every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Those are her days.
Yeah.
We are her games on Saturdays, like, and I'm not gonna let her stop, right? Like, I'm not gonna let her do what I did. And it's really like boosted her confidence. She's like wanted to quit, and I pushed her, and she's like kicking butt now.
That's
Like,
awesome.
we're just I'm just experiencing life, and
Yeah.
it's insane. It's really insane.
Yeah. And it's funny you said that because when I did the promo post, I mentioned that you were living life, not just existing. And
Right.
that's a huge difference.
Very. I'm gonna plug my phone in. It's about to die. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're all right. Go ahead.
Okay. the joys of working on your phone all day.
Yes.
um, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where life's at right now. You know, my mom, she still has like physical custody, or not. I mean, she's through the courts has custody, but like she's allowed the kids to live with me. You know, they are my like financial responsibility. She, as soon as I got out, like I said, okay, you're a grandma, you're not their mom. Like, go be a grandma again.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It was very, and I had to make those amends and try to work my way back into my family's life, but in a slow manner. Like, they were very resistant. I mean, they were very welcoming, but resistant to it in
Yeah.
a way, right? Because they don't know, like, is this going to stick?
Right. Yeah, that's
Is
what I
this
would tell
change
guys
real?
in prison. Exactly. I tell them all, I would tell
Right.
them all the time, you know, you've been messing up for some of those guys been messing up in and out of prison for 20, 30 years. And they want to say, well, my families, they don't see that I've changed. It takes
Right.
time. You're going to have to get out and show them.
Exactly. It takes a minute. It takes trust. And that takes years
Yeah.
to build.
Yeah.
That takes years. And you know, my family still, they are still not sure. Like, I'll come up 4 years sober pretty soon, and they still worry, like, is Megan, is she gonna stay sober? But like, they're so fucking proud of me, you know, like my
Yeah.
mom's crying constantly any accomplishment I have. Like,
Yeah.
it it's cool. It's cool to be not be a burden.
Yeah. It is.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
I
Like,
understand. Yeah.
you know, like my mom doesn't wait by the phone anymore,
Mm-hmm.
waiting for a phone call to come like identify her daughter's body in the morgue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was like accepting that I made that a reality for her. So getting through the things I put my kids through and the damage that I did to my mom, those have been the most challenging things to process and work through. Um, but you know, like I finally became willing and ready to not sit in my misery anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, you
I
know, that
love
was a
it.
choice that I had to make. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't change it. Like, I can't change anything I did.
Yeah.
Um,
You can't.
I can't.
It's what
It's
you're doing now, though.
that, you know, I
Yeah.
can be a voice, I can be an advocate, I can let people know, like, this, you don't have to be the poor choices that you made. Yes, they happened, and yes, there are consequences, and there is that scarlet letter that will always follow you. Um, but it's what you make of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And by being vocal and being a voice for people and not letting this stop me, I'm hoping that it can do the same for other people,
Yeah.
you know? And
And
like what you
that's
guys
what,
are doing.
yeah. And that's what Nathan says all the time is, you know, we have a responsibility to the people coming out to show them it is possible
Yeah.
to do this.
Right. Exactly. It's that, you know, kind of like going to the steps, right? And you have that 12th step where you're like giving
Mm-hmm.
back what has been given to us. And we
Mm-hmm.
found a way to live life outside of prison without numbing ourselves, without, you know,
Mm-hmm.
using poor behaviors and things that no longer serve us.
Mm-hmm.
Like taking the victim glasses off, seeing the world for what it is. Yeah, are there injustices? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like, you can't change that injustice, so keep moving. Keep doing
Yes.
something to shake things up
Yes.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't get stuck on the shit that you
no,
can't change.
Yeah.
that part. You know, and live life. And this is something, you know, my sponsor has told me lately, and she said, you know, you need to live life and clean, like keep your side of the street clean and do it the least amount of harm to others. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I definitely noticed recently that like poor behaviors were creeping back in, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
drugs or alcohol, but like poor behaviors that used to be what Megan did.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I needed a reality check.
Yeah.
Needed a big reality check in sobriety.
But the thing is you realize that and you did something about it. You didn't
Mm-hmm.
just go back to using.
No, yeah,
Right.
right. Because you get tools, right? When you open your ears up and you listen, you're like, oh, okay, I have like this whole tool belt of things that I can do way before drugs and alcohol become an option.
Right.
Way before.
Oh, a whole different set of tools than what you used to use.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Right. Like, you know, trafficking drugs for the cartel is not an option anymore.
Right.
God.
Exactly.
Yeah, but being in tune enough with
Uh-oh. Nathan froze up on us.
Uh-oh. He
First thing he
did.
says all night and he froze
I
up.
know. The first thing and it freezes.
Oh
Darn
my.
yourself to
it.
recognize that and,
Oh,
to be
oh,
able to, am
You
I back?
froze all the way up as soon as you opened your mouth.
Am I
You're
back
back.
though?
Yeah, you're back.
Great. It's
I
probably
mean,
just my internet.
it is the internet indicator over here is showing you got weak internet. But as soon as you went
Okay.
it, so what'd you
I was
say?
saying it says a lot that you're in tune enough with yourself
Hmm.
to recognize that complacency and those little things when they start creeping back in. Because a lot of people, regardless of the amount of time that they've been out, regardless of the amount of time that they've been sober, complacency is a real thing.
Yeah, man.
And, when that hits, if you're not in tune enough with yourself to see it, like you'll be back to doing your old shit
oh
just
yeah.
that quick.
Yep,
Hmm. Absolutely.
definitely.
And and here, just the last thing, right? So I engaged in behaviors that no longer served me, right? And in doing that, I felt exactly the way I would have felt if I was going to pick up my dope.
Hmm.
That rush came back, the chaos, like the feeling of chaos, the feeling of like like everything came back and it was so natural. And it was like, okay, this is scary. And this is not okay. I can't feel this way cuz I'll die.
Yeah,
And like you said, having the ability to know that and to see that and then to immediately or to more quickly change the behavior, right?
Mhm.
yep. Megan, this has been awesome. This has been a really cool story. I love I mean
It's
it's
just
so shock factor for one, but how you went from one extreme to the other, and not extreme on the good, not like extreme good or
right.
whatever, but you're living your life and you're not going back, and you have the resolve, you have the kids in your life, and you're helping other people stay out. Um, it's exactly what this show is all about, and exactly what ending the stigma is all about. Is just to show you're living it. You're doing exactly what we want people to see um, by doing this. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And everybody that dropped a comment, the comments were going crazy there for a while. Um, I'm sorry I didn't get them pulled up on screen. Megan, I was into Megan's story and I didn't want to interrupt Megan's story, so I didn't pull
Sorry.
any comments up on the screen. I will pull this one
All
up
right.
though from Robert right at the very end. Um, the aftermath is such an inspiration about how you were giving back and living life to the fullest. Exactly right. And then it cut off. It said, "Thank you again, Megan. You're a true sober warrior."
Mm,
But there
thank
were comments. If you want to go back and look at all the comments, people were like just in
you.
awe and saying all kinds of good
Mhm.
stuff. I'm not going to pull them all up because there's a lot of them.
Okay.
Um, but you can go back on my LinkedIn post or Nathan's most of them are on mine, and look at the comments if you want to see what people were saying. Most of the time I pull them up on screen,
Right.
but you were in such a groove, I didn't want to interrupt it.
I tend to do that. I'm so
No, and
sorry.
that's okay. I loved it. It was great.
Okay, good.
Again, thank you for being here. I don't have anything else to say. Nathan, you have anything else you want
Nope.
Any
to
questions,
add?
concerns?
Yeah, any questions, comments, or concerns? To everybody that showed up and listened, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We appreciate all your support every time we do this, every time we post about it. Y'all are absolute rock stars, and we couldn't do it without your support. Wouldn't be able to do it without your support. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
In 2 weeks for ending the stigma, we have Desi Bruce on. Desi works for Cornbread Hustle, the second chance staffing and recruiting agency in Dallas. We had another one of their employees on, their director of operations. He was on 2 weeks ago. Desi has a really similar story. Like she was into some really crazy stuff, and she's the only one in her family that did it. Uh, she'll be on with us in 2 weeks. I'm going to try to get. I'm going to. I mean, it's just a pool of great stories, but like there's a bunch of cool people that work at Cornbread Hustle that have awesome stories like this. Um, as much as I love Cornbread Hustle, it's not me promoting them. It's just they have some. All of their employees have either 5 years in prison or more, or 5 years in addiction or more. So they've all of them have just amazing success stories. So I'm going to try and get Donna Mollenhauer. Did I say your name right, Donna Mollenhauer? Yep. I'm going to try and get her on here in the next month or two. So, yep, that's it. 2 weeks we have Desi Bruce. She'll be sharing her story with us. And I think that's it. Thank y'all so much for coming, and we will see y'all again in a couple weeks.